Hey everyone, and welcome to part 2 of Zero's Workshop. Today is still Wednesday, November 18, 2015. I am still Mark Brash, your host, and in this segment we're going to look at this Audio-Technica wireless microphone system. This microphone system was sent to me by Russ Gries. He uses it in his workshop. He's been having some problems with it. I promised him that I would take a look at it and see if I can't figure out why he's having so many problems, and I think I have the answer. Stay tuned. So for those of you who watch Russ's channel, you are pretty familiar with the problems that he's been having with this very wireless mic when he's going live, and you have to deal with the sound of well, that's a phenomenon known as multipath cancellation. And this is a VHF microphone system, not unlike the microphone system that I have, but there's a small difference in this microphone system, and I think I understand what's going on. I'm going to be using the test equipment that I get to play with in my normal course of my job employment. I have some pretty nice toys that I can use to put this wireless mic through its paces, make sure that it's on frequency, make sure that it's stable, that it's deviating correctly. But that's not the real root cause of the problem, and there are different ways, numerous ways that you can eliminate multipath cancellation. When I send this back, I think what's going to end up happening is I'm going to make a small modification to this, and we're going to send it back to Russ and let him try it out. I have a feeling that those of you who watch Russ's live channel, you're going to be real happy when you don't have to deal with all those snap, crackles, and pops that you've been used to on his channel. Let's get into it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this phenomenon called multipath cancellation. Let's pretend that my right finger is a transmitting antenna and my left finger is a receiving antenna. The transmitting antenna emanates a signal that radiates out in all directions from the center of the transmission. All right, so you get these radio waves traveling from the transmitting antenna to the receiving antenna. So the transmitter emits the signal, and the waves travel, and they get to the receiving antenna, and then they're converted back to whatever source or whatever signal that you're looking for. In this case, audio. So the transmitting antenna is sending, the receiving antenna is receiving, and in an ideal situation, it's going from a straight line from the transmitting antenna to the receiving antenna without any interference. The reality is, however, when you're sending signals from the transmitting antenna out in all directions, there are other places in the room that are getting these received signals, and they're bouncing off of these other surfaces in the room. So if I have a surface behind the transmitting antenna that is receiving the transmitter and then reflecting back to the receiving antenna, now I have two signals arriving at the receiving antenna. I have the original fundamental signal that comes directly from the transmitting antenna, and then I have the reflected signal that had to travel a little bit further in distance. So that reflected signal travels in this direction till it hits the source that it's reflecting off of. Then it turns around and it travels back in this direction. And what can happen is that reflected signal, being slightly different in time, could also be exactly out of phase. And when you get two alternating current signals that are out of phase, they cancel. And if they happen to cancel where the receiving antenna is located, then you end up with that white noise that you hear, and the buzzing and the crackling that Russ was getting. This problem is made even more prominent if you have a very small receiving antenna. I want to show you this receiving antenna that they have on the wireless mic system. Okay, This wireless microphone receiver, this is the receiver unit that Russ has, uses a little rubber duck antenna. Now, while this is electrically equivalent to a full quarter wave at the frequency that this receiver is operating at, really this is a miniaturized antenna. And because the antenna is so small, the probability is much greater that you'll end up with a condition where you could get a situation where the signal arriving at some point along this short antenna would cancel. A full quarter wavelength at this frequency is not 6 inches long, it's 17 inches long. And if you had a piece of wire 17 inches long, chances are very good a portion of that wire is going to be someplace in the field where you're not getting any cancellation effect from the reflected signals in the room. So what I'm going to do, I think, in the end, is I'm going to add a wire coming out of the bottom of this receiver pack that's going to be 17 inches long. It's going to be a black, flexible, multi-strand wire. It's just going to dangle out of the bottom of this receiver. Okay, it's going to be 17 inches long, and that's what we call a counterpoise. This counterpoise is going to be the other half of a dipole antenna that is going to make up the rest of this receiver system. And I think that is really going to alleviate the situation. I'm still going to put this thing through all of its technical diagnostics. We're going to make sure that the internal circuitry is tuned correctly, that it is on frequency, etc., etc. But I think that's where we're headed with this little project. Okay, so this is the General Dynamics R8000 Communications System Analyzer. It's a service monitor. This is the device that I use for most of my field operations when I'm doing diagnostics on communications test equipment in the field. And this is what we'll be using to test Russ's wireless mic system. So I'm going to turn it on. We'll let it go through its boot up sequence, and this takes a few seconds. Incidentally, all of my copper nanoparticles have precipitated out. I have a bluish yellow-green solution of the expended copper sulfate, and I'll be draining this off and making my copper paint out of that. Anyway, so there we go. We are in the UHF range. I'm preset to 463, 468 megahertz. We're going to change that. So go to the, let's see, turn off my RF source, go to RF zone, change my monitor frequency, and my transmit frequencies on this particular transmitter are 169.505 and 170.305. So 169.505 megahertz. And we really don't need to worry about generating because, well, at least not in this case. But for the receiver, I will be generating on the same frequency. 169.505. All right. Let me get some batteries for the transmitter and the receiver, and we'll get the testing started. All right then. The transmitter, unlike the receiver, the transmitter can have an antenna that's a single point. However, in this case, it's not. Instead of having an actual antenna, what this transmitter does is it uses the cable for the wireless mic as the transmitting antenna, which is exactly the same as the mic that I'm using to record this video. This is a Nady brand wireless microphone system. I happen to like Nady quite a lot. But in this case, this is a Audio Technica. Is that right? Audio Technica? Yeah. And I'm going to be clipping my leads just onto this in any old fashion, and I should see the peak of the transmitted signal right here in the middle, and my frequency error will be displayed right here on the display, my input level here, and the deviation. This is what we call down in the mud, and what we're looking for is a signal that's going to peak up in the middle coming out of the mud when I turn the transmitter on. So let's see what happens. And there it is. And yeah, it's this peak right here should be over here. So my frequency error is 4.34 kilohertz. That's a lot. That's way off frequency. That could be part of Russ's problem. We're going to fix that. We've got a small assortment of non-ferrous alignment tools that I can insert into the adjustments for each of these. Now, these transmitters are crystal controlled, but the crystals can be pulled slightly above or below their center frequency by tuning the oscillator tank circuits that they're associated with. And that is what we're going to try here. Oh, there we go. Look at that. All right. Let's zoom in, and I'm going to show you this. All right. Here's where we started. Over 4 kilohertz off frequency. And now I'm just going to slide that in. Now we are pretty much dead nuts on frequency. So our transmitter frequency is 169.505 megahertz. So this is what a frequency modulated envelope looks like. It's just fairly wide band. And if I go to a wider bandwidth, let's call it 25K. That sounds a little better. Much higher fidelity. And where else do I want to go? I guess that's it. If I go to the modulation scope, now I can show you what I wanted to show you. Vertical scale, 2 kilohertz. Testing, 1, 1, 1, 2. So I got about 4 kilohertz of deviation. And decent signal. We're on frequency. And I don't hear any static in the earpiece. So with the headphones plugged into this now, I can walk around the room and hopefully find a location where I would encounter the multipath distortion that I was talking about. And I should hear it in the headphones that I have attached to the output jack of the receiver. I may or may not get that situation because it was so far off frequency before. Oh, here's one. When I walked in the proximity of the metal door, the reflective surface that I was just talking about, I found a spot. I'm trying to locate that spot again. I probably won't find it. Oh, there's one right there. Okay, so I know I have a spot where I've got multipath underneath one of my fluorescent lights here in front of the door, and I can replicate that fairly easily. Now, to test my theory with the counterpoise, I'm just going to take an alligator clip that is about 17 inches long and clip it onto the base of the antenna where I wanted to. So I want to show you what I've done with this Alligator clip. All right, I've simply clipped it onto the base of the antenna, and I've essentially taken this receiver and given it a rabbit ears antenna rather than a single little 6-inch antenna. I now have a 1/4 wavelength antenna hanging off the bottom side of it, and I'm going to walk around the room, see if I can find those same multipath locations, and see if I can't find any multipath locations while I walk around with this. So I'm standing in the area where I did have multipath, and I'm not finding it. So let me continue to hunt now, make sure I didn't trade one set of circumstances for another. And I am not. So that's a wrap. I will be attaching a black antenna off the base of the existing antenna, going in the opposite direction from the existing antenna. It will simply hang out of the bottom of the out of the case and dangle, and Russ can place this wherever he wants to. What this will do is it gives a much broader surface area for it to receive the signals on, so that if the instance of multipath canceling happens to occur here on the antenna wire, it certainly would not be out here on the antenna wire, and there will at least be some part of the antenna wire that is in the field that is not being canceled and receiving some signal to the receiver unit. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed that little demonstration. I will be packing these things, putting these things back together again, putting the covers back on, packing this all back up, sending it off to Russ and letting him try it out. Hopefully we have resolved his multipath cancellation problem in the workshop, and you will be able to enjoy watching him live without the that you're so accustomed to when he's broadcasting live. That's all for now. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, please rate, share, comment, and subscribe to my videos. And peace, everyone. 1, 2. Hello. Hello. Test. 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 1. 1. 1. 2. 2. 2. 3. 3. 3.